Well, we are on a journey of transformation this month. Well, always, right? But this month, the theme is transformation. And my talk title today is focused on repairs and refueling on the road of transformation. And notice I didn't say to transformation, right? Of transformation. We're on a journey, and the journey of this beautiful life that we are on, and it's not a destination for our transformation, but every moment, the opportunity to really transform our being. And I love the metaphor of a road trip, you know, being on this trip, because it's kind of a wild ride, isn't it, life? At times it can be filled with beauty and adventure and all these amazing experiences. It can be filled with those tough parts of our journey. You know, sometimes we could be stuck in the mud. Sometimes we could be on the side of the road needing a little repair and a little support, right? And sometimes we can be idling, just waiting for someone or something to change. You know, I mean, we've all been in all those places, I'm sure. And you know, it's funny, as I was working on my talk, that the song from, what is it, the Grateful Dead, of that line, "What a long, strange trip it's been," kept coming up, you know, because life takes a lot of twists and turns, doesn't it? But it's all part of the spiritual journey, being spiritual beings having this human experience. So what is this road of transformation that we're on? You know, transformation occurs when we've had a profound, enduring shift in our being, in our hearts and minds. That's the moments of transformation, when we can have that profound, enduring shift. And that is available to us throughout our day, each and every day. So, and the transformation, this road of spiritual transformation, is about transforming more and more into that Christ nature of our being, into our divine self, our God self, if you will. Stepping more and more into that. I've been listening to a Dharma talk by Dr. Larry Wood, and he was the co-founder of the Lotus Institute and one of Thich Nhat Hanh's main teachers as well. And he passed away recently. I was listening to one of his talks, and he used this beautiful metaphor as well of the inner axes that we have. The axes of energy, the vertical axis of energy, you know, that God energy, grounded in spirit, and then the horizontal axis of connection to the world, connection to each other, to spirit. And I was thinking about all the ways that our axes can get all wonky or twisted, if you will. You know, many of you know, I'll use a personal example, you know, many of you know that I've been caring for a loved one with Alzheimer's part-time for many years now. And I've been looking at and really doing a lot of spiritual work around this axis of connection is way hyperextended, and needing to bring that in a bit and really clearing that axis of energy, that God energy, clearing it of all the blocks and filling myself up, putting the extra work in to be filled with that God energy and not have it all stopped up and you know, having roadblocks there in that channel, if you will. And I was thinking about, let me get teary here, the events of this week. You know, how it's been a big week for our world, for our society, and especially our community. How sometimes those axes just get disconnected. And I know we've had a lot of events this week, but the one in Evergreen with the high school shooting really touched my heart, because I was minister up there for 4 years. Yeah, and I'm gonna, and I taught nonviolent communication in the high school there to the student leaders. And they were so committed to welcoming in those freshmen and sophomore and you know, bringing them into the fold, and to, you know, we'll never know what
was going on for Desmond to lead to doing such a horrific act, but I gotta imagine that his axes were cut off, you know, he was disconnected and not in tune with that God of his being, you know, the God energy moving in and through all. Those axes were all crumpled in some way, right, to lead to such a thing. And my heart goes out to all of the people that were affected and all the students and Desmond's family as well, what they're going through, and the family of the victims, you know, everyone. We need to really enfold them in love and compassion, everyone. And that's the main thing about this journey to transformation too, is, you know, we have to travel in a vehicle of compassion, don't we? For everyone, no exceptions. We all have that Christ light within us, and sometimes it gets we get very disconnected from it and misguided. But really, really coming from that vehicle of compassion. And it reminded me of this week's events, reminded me of a Chinese folk tale. The story of, I think it's pronounced Maoshan. The Princess Maoshan, who we later know as Goddess Guan Yin. Maoshan was the daughter of a very cruel king. And he had 3 daughters, and he forced them all into marriage, except for Maoshan, the youngest daughter, refused to get married. She was a devout Buddhist, and she refused to marry this wealthy man that her father had kind of set up arranged her marriage. But she said to her father, "I will marry this man on one condition. One, that you ease the misfortune of the world in 3 ways: the suffering of people as they age, the suffering of people as they fall ill, and the suffering we experience around death." And of course, first of all, those 3 things really hit home as I reflected on the story, because we've experienced all 3 of those this week, right? Suffering around these kids trying to come of age, you know, and just navigate their lives. Suffering around emotional and physical harm that we've seen, and suffering around deaths that we've seen this week too. And so the king, unfortunately, said no and declined her request. And then he not only did that, he sent her into a life of suffering, of hard work, of grueling work. She ended up at a monastery. And of course, being who she was on the spiritual path, she transformed that experience into a beneficial experience for herself. And the king was kind of outraged that it wasn't getting to her, right? And so he tried to burn the monastery down. Nice dad, huh? Not so much. But Miao Shan, she worked that as a spiritual practice and held benevolence and peace in her heart. Well, several years later, her dad, the cruel king, fell ill. And a monk came to him and said, "The only medicine that will work to cure your illness is made from the arms and eyes of a person who holds no anger." And he directed the king's men to the monastery where Maya Shan was. And of course, it was her, the one that held no anger. And they made the request of her for her arms and her eyes, and she gave that as a sacrifice for her dad's health and healing. Now, they made the medicine, the king got well, better, and he and the queen traveled to the monastery to thank the person who had made such a sacrifice for him. And they found their long-lost daughter mutilated, but still with benevolence and peace in her heart. And he was shocked that she had given this sacrifice for him and begged her forgiveness. And in a flash of light, Miao Shen was transformed to Guan Yin, the goddess with 1,000 eyes and 1,000 hands. 1,000 eyes to see the suffering of the world with compassion, and 1,000 hands to go out and do that which was to be done, right? To go out and serve the world. It's such a beautiful story of compassion, of, this is just going to be emotional talk for me, you guys. Just such a big thing this week. It's the story, it's our story, right? It's our story of keeping that benevolence in our hearts, that peace in our hearts, that compassion in our hearts in such a way that we can see the atrocities of the world and go out and do what is ours to do, to make a difference in the world. And to do that. And when we do that, spontaneous right action unfolds and comes forward. Lori Gottlieb, in her book, Maybe You Should Talk to Someone, recalls that she saw a magnet on the office kitchen refrigerator that said, peace. It does not mean to be in a place where there is not noise, trouble, or hard work. It means to be in the midst of those things and still be calm in your heart. To be in the midst of those things and still be calm in your heart. Sorry, I'm going to grab a tissue. Oh, Reka's getting one for me. Thank you. Yeah, we all go through suffering, right? We all go through it. Thank you. And we can't necessarily ease all the atrocities of the world, but we can repair and refuel ourselves spiritually such that we can go out and be that Christ light in the world, that God light in the world, and really bring that to that. Unity has a teaching on the 12 powers, and the 12 powers are 12 innate gifts that we have within ourselves, that if we activate them and bring them forth, we're bringing forth our divine self, our divine nature. And I want us to focus on two of those this week: the power of renunciation and the power of zeal. Renunciation and zeal. So renunciation, I'll give you Charles Fillmore, a co-founder in Unity's definition of that. It's our ability to release negative thoughts, feelings, and beliefs from our consciousness. It's our ability to forgive, to eliminate old patterns of thinking, being, and doing for more elevated ones. In other words, it's our ability to see with 1,000 eyes, right? And to eliminate those things that are not of spirit. And so how do we know where to go to do our renunciation work in ourselves? We listen for the rattle in our hearts and minds, the rattle of resentment, the rattle of anger. We look for, where are we spinning our wheels? We look for and reflect on, how am I spending my heart? How am I spending my mind? How am I spending my time and my energy and my resources? And look at, okay, where is that out of alignment with my higher self? And when we find those misalignments, we renunciate that. We say a clear no. I am no longer willing to do that pattern, or I'm no longer willing to hold that thought. I'm no longer willing to live in resentment or guilt or shame or whatever it is for each of us, or resignation or whatever. Really making time to renounce that. And that practice can look different for each of us, right? Right now I'm doing a 90-day practice where I have sort of a reading about renunciation that I've personalized to me, of those things that I'm willing to renounce right now in me. And taking the 5 minutes each day in prayer time to read that with feeling and with connection, that energetic connection of spirit, and to use that for my renunciation process. But maybe for some of you it's journaling, or maybe for some of you it's doing your own little burning bowl or something. There's lots of ways to renounce things in us that we're ready to let go of. But find what it is and practice that. And when we do, we are guided to spontaneous right action. You know, in 2006, when I was minister up in Evergreen at Mountain Light Unity, we went through the tragedy of the Platte County High School hostage situation where 7 girls were abused, and Emily Keyes lost her life at the high school there. And I am still touched to this day about how Emily Keyes' parents responded in this situation. Here they are in the moment of losing their daughter and going through all the emotions, which I imagine range from anger to deep sadness and loss and everything in between, right? And they connected with that higher part of themselves, that power of renunciation, whether they knew it or not, they knew the energy of it. And in the process, they were able to write a statement that they had their friend Luis Gonzalez communicate to the public, to the community. And here's what they said: in memory of Emily, we would like everybody to go out and do random acts of kindness, random acts of love to your friends, to your neighbors, to your fellow students. Let us not allow negative thoughts of what occurred to enter our hearts. I don't know about you, but I don't know if I would make it that fast to that statement as a parent. You know, I have a 15-year-old, and I mean, that was profound transformation. And what I loved about, what touched my heart about that is I don't think the Keys were in denial about the devastating loss they were going through. I think they were really clear that they did not want anger and resentment to take up permanent residence in their hearts or the hearts of any of us. They were saying a clear, don't let this drive negativity into you, and renunciate that. Don't let it impact you in a negative way. That's the power of renunciation, absolutely. And so whatever it is we need to release, whether it's cynicism or resignation or whatever it is, that's ours to do right now. So we're not in bondage to the traumas that we see throughout our world. And then we tap into that power of zeal, and drop into that place of divine love and let love activate that zeal within us. So Charles says that defines zeal as that inward fire of the soul that urges us onward, regardless of the intellectual mind of caution and conservatism. It's the urge behind all things. So, of course, it's that passion of spirit within us, right? We need it for forward spiritual movement. That zeal calls us forth to be the change that we wish to see in the world, as Connie said. It calls us forward. And Reverend Winifred Wilkinson Hossman, who's another Unity author, she says, correctly established with wisdom and love and oriented to spiritual activity, the awakening power of zeal is a flame that burns but does not destroy. It begins to generate the energy you need to accomplish the things you need to do. And zeal leads us to our enthusiasm and joy. Of course, we have to temper it with wisdom, or then it gets to be, if we don't, it's just ego-driven, right? And leads to extremism and not healthy actions. But tempering it with that wisdom and bringing that forth is powerful. Lori Gottlieb, the author I mentioned before, she also says, regret can go one of two ways. It can either shackle you to the past or serve as an engine for change. It can shackle us or serve as an engine for change. And part of that renunciating, repairing that by letting go of the regret, but allowing whatever it is behind the regret to be fueled by our zeal, by our spiritual passion, to go out and be a light in this world, to bring our light and love, to be that love in action. So I want to just close with a poem today. And Friday night, I live in Lafayette, and they have a monthly event throughout the summer, a community event called Art Night Out, where visual artists and performing artists, and there's food trucks and all of that, they come out and we block off the street and the whole community gathers. It's a very family-oriented, beautiful event. And one of the artists there is Lafayette's poet laureate. And I think he goes by Z Bass. I'm not sure if it's Z Bass or Z Bass. But anyway, he's Lafayette's poet laureate. And he does performance poetry. And the way he does it is he brings this old typewriter to the booth, and to one of the booths there. And anyone can come up to him and ask him to write a poem for them. And, you know, you give him a love offering, and you give him a topic or a few words, and he will type out a poem right there, right in front of you. And I asked him on Friday night to write us a poem about transformation. And here's what he wrote. On this road, one said we would die by scars, set foot and be the planted rock, but the rain would taste bitter. So I would wish this rock be a seed and grow once again. For if the forest is ash, I will sprout my heart to the sky. For if the forest is ash, I will sprout my heart to the sky, and let the south wind whisper the next heading. For I am a student. So I may carry scars, but I shall hold them as scriptures and not wear them as a veil of shame. Grow, my little seed. So let's all go out and experience transformation in our hearts and minds this week. And be that difference in the world. And let's take that now into this time of meditation. And I'm going to bring my crystal bowl, came with me to take us into our time within. So I just invite you to take a nice deep breath in, breathing into that spiritual center. Breathing out, releasing, feeling that softening in our being. Allowing this tone to carry us ever more inward. Breathing in peace. And breathing out peace. Breathing into that center of divine love in our being. And breathing out love to the world. As we go deeper into that inner sanctuary, we tend to the axes of our being. We connect to that flow of divine energy, that God energy that is flowing in and through and around us. We tend to our heart, all the ways that it is connected to our world and our community. And we allow Spirit to make repairs in us, to refuel us for the journey, this beautiful journey of life with its ups and downs. And so we listen for that wisdom and guidance of Spirit as we rest in the silence. as we come out of the silence, we set the intention that we catch hold of those divine inspiration and insights that guide us to how we are to be love and light in the world. We give thanks for that guidance that we've caught hold of, and we give thanks for this journey of transformation that we are on, this journey, this beautiful journey of life. And so we go forth with benevolence and peace in our hearts, with gratitude and with thanksgiving. And so it is. Amen.